Do you think it's fair that workers lose their health benefits during this strike while the CEO gets $18 million for 4 months' work? Sound fair to you? So I guess what I'm asking you, will you have the independence to say, sorry, Mr. President, I've got a job to do? Or will you say, yes, sir, I'll do it?
I might say it.
Is corporate greed winning while workers lose everything? In this explosive Senate hearing, Senator Bernie Sanders confronts a key nominee for the National Labor Relations Board about Boeing's shocking CEO pay and the harsh reality faced by striking workers. Watch as the battle for worker rights heats up.
Sanders.
Let me start off with Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, in your remarks, you talked about fairness and compromise and trying to bring people together. You are now the General Chief Labor Counsel at Boeing. As you're aware, there's been a strike going on for 2 months now. And I want to get a sense from you as to about that strike, because I think it will tell us a little bit about what kind of member of the NLRB you will be. So let me start off by asking you a very simple question, and that is, do you think it's was appropriate for Boeing to pay its current CEO $18 million in compensation for 4 months of work? 4 months of work, while it at the same time eliminated the health care benefits for 3,200 machinists in St. Louis. Is that the kind of approach that you would use as a member of the NLRB?
Good morning, Senator Sanders, and thank you. Let me start out by saying that I'm not here as a representative of Boeing. I'm here to discuss my nomination. Secondly, Senator, I have not been involved in the negotiations in St. Louis. I've been specifically kept out of those negotiations because in anticipation of this process.
You are the Chief Labor Counsel for
Senator.
Boeing, and you have no knowledge or not been involved in the strike in St. Louis?
That's correct. We have other lawyers that are handling
Well, all right,
this matter.
but you are a high-ranking member of the Boeing Corporation, so I'm giving you information which is accurate, whether you've been involved or not. You want to be a member of the NLRB, you tell us you want to treat workers fair. Do you think it's fair that workers lose their health benefits during this strike while the CEO gets $18 million for 4 months' work? Sound fair to you?
Senator, I'm not going to comment on the compensation of other executives. I will say that there was negotiations in St. Louis. There was this is all public information. There were negotiations in St. Louis. There was an agreement reached with the union. The union hailed that agreement as a landmark agreement.
But that agreement was
and recommended.
But that agreement was rejected by the workers.
The union recommended that it be ratified.
But it was rejected by the rank and file, correct?
And that's their right.
That's right. That is their right. Excuse me.
Yes, sir.
If Boeing could sign a fair contract with 32,000 machinists in the state of Washington, members of the IAM, last year, why can't, in your judgment, it sign a similar contract for 3,200, 10% of the workers, machinists in St. Louis who manufacture fighter jets for the military?
Senator, respectfully, I'm not going to get into, I'm unable to really comment on the negotiation status for our negotiation in St. Louis.
Let me ask Mr. Murphy, thank you. Let me ask Mr. Murphy and Mr. Palmieri a question, and that is SpaceX, as you know, is owned by Elon Musk, the wealthiest man in the world, and Amazon, owned by Jeff Bezos. I don't know where Jeff is now, maybe second or third. He's struggling, but he's up there. They have both filed lawsuits arguing that the National Labor Relations Board is unconstitutional. In other words, you're aware of that, Mr. Murphy. Simple question. Do you believe that the NLRB is unconstitutional?
No, I do not, Senator. The Supreme Court in 1937 in Jones and Laughlin Steel found that the National Labor Relations Act was constitutional. Unless there is a definitive Supreme Court decision to the contrary, I believe that it remains constitutional. There may be constitutional infirmities that could be redressed, but that would not negate the constitutionality of the agency.
Thank you. Mr. Palmieri?
While I don't have a specific view, I would agree that it has been found constitutional in the past.
All right, let me ask you, if President Trump directs you to rule in favor of Amazon or SpaceX and in opposition to the rights of their employees, would you do so?
It's a hypothetical that I hope never comes to pass, sir. I would have to contemplate all options.
The problem that we are living in is a moment where a lot of things that we didn't think would pass are passing. So I guess what I'm asking you, will you have the independence to say, sorry, Mr. President, I've got a job to do? Or will you say, yes, sir, I'll do it?
I might say, depending upon the circumstances, sir, that I question that directive and under the law that I'm obliged to apply. And if the Supreme Court holds, as it apparently would on a procedural basis, that the president has the opportunity to remove me, then the president would have that option.
Okay, thank you.
During a Senate Health, Education, Labor, and Pensions Committee hearing on Wednesday, Senator Bernie Sanders, Independent Vermont, questioned Scott Mayer, President Trump's nominee for a position on the National Labor Relations Board, NLRB, about his stance on worker rights and corporate fairness. Mayer, who also serves as the chief counsel for Boeing, faced intense scrutiny regarding the ongoing strike at Boeing and the company's compensation practices. Senator Sanders began the questioning by addressing a key issue in the Boeing strike, which had been ongoing for 2 months at the time. Sanders pointed out that Boeing's CEO had received an $18 million compensation package for just 4 months of work, while the company had eliminated health care benefits for 3,200 machinists in St. Louis. Sanders asked Mayer whether it was appropriate for the company to reward its CEO so handsomely while its workers were left without crucial benefits. Mayer responded that he was not at the hearing as a representative of Boeing, but rather to discuss his nomination for the NLRB. He stressed that, due to his impending nomination process, he had been kept out of the negotiations surrounding the St. Louis strike. Despite Mayer's attempt to distance himself from the specifics of the strike, Sanders continued to press the issue. He asked if it was fair that Boeing had been able to reach a fair contract with 32,000 machinists in Washington state, yet had been unable to do the same for 3,200 workers in St. Louis, who manufacture fighter jets for the military. Mayer sidestepped providing a direct response, reiterating that he was not involved in the St. Louis negotiations and was unable to comment on their status. Sanders did not let up, emphasizing the disparity between the treatment of the Boeing CEO and the workers. He pointed out that while the CEO was receiving millions for a short-term role, workers were struggling without basic benefits. Mayer acknowledged that Boeing had reached a landmark agreement with the union in St. Louis, but it had been rejected by the workers themselves, which Sanders acknowledged as their right. However, Sanders made clear his frustration with the situation, suggesting that the disparity in how Boeing treated its workers and its executives raised questions about Mayer's potential future role in the NLRB. The conversation then turned to broader issues concerning the NLRB and its constitutional standing. Sanders brought up the lawsuits filed by both SpaceX and Amazon, owned by the wealthiest men in the world, Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos, respectively. These companies had argued that the NLRB was unconstitutional. Sanders asked the nominees whether they believed the NLRB was unconstitutional, as claimed by these tech giants. Mayer, in response, firmly rejected the notion that the NLRB was unconstitutional. He pointed out that the Supreme Court had upheld the constitutionality of the National Labor Relations Act in 1937, specifically in the case of Jones and Laughlin Steel Corporation v. NLRB. Mayer stated that unless a definitive Supreme Court ruling changed this interpretation, the NLRB's constitutionality remained intact, though he acknowledged that there could be legal issues that might need to be addressed. Senator Sanders then shifted to a more personal and hypothetical question, asking whether the nominees would follow a directive from President Trump to rule in favor of companies like Amazon or SpaceX at the expense of workers' rights. Mayer, along with other nominees, expressed his commitment to the independence of the NLRB. He stressed that, if confronted with such a directive, he would consider all legal options and would not automatically comply. Mayer emphasized that his duty would be to uphold the law, and if the president directed him to act contrary to that duty, he would have to question the directive. He further noted that the president would have the authority to remove him from the position if his actions were not in line with the administration's wishes. The line of questioning made clear that Sanders was concerned not only about the corporate practices of powerful companies like Boeing, Amazon, and SpaceX, but also about the potential for political influence to sway labor decisions at the NLRB. The discussion underscored the ongoing tension between the rights of workers and the influence of corporate power in Washington, D.C. This exchange between Sanders and Mayer highlighted broader issues surrounding labor rights, executive compensation, and the independence of regulatory bodies like the NLRB. Sanders expressed his frustration with the imbalance of power in the current labor negotiations, particularly how large corporations like Boeing could continue to pay their CEOs exorbitant salaries while their workers suffered. The hearing revealed the complexity of labor negotiations and the ongoing struggle for fair treatment of workers, as well as the potential challenges the NLRB faces in maintaining its independence in a politically charged environment. The conversation ultimately raised more questions about Mayer's potential role in the NLRB, particularly in cases where powerful corporations are involved. Sanders' questions about Boeing and the larger issues of executive compensation and worker rights underscored the deep concerns over corporate influence and the ability of the NLRB to remain impartial when making decisions about workers' rights. The testimony left a strong impression that, for the NLRB to function effectively, it must be able to operate without interference from the powerful interests that it is meant to regulate.